Aaron Bushnell, ein 25-jähriger Soldat der US-Luftwaffe, zündete sich vergangenen Samstag vor der israelischen Botschaft in Washington, D.C. an und verstarb an seinen Verletzungen. Als Soldat und Mensch konnte er den Völkermord, den die israelische Regierung an den Palästinensern begeht, nicht länger ertragen. Eines der letzten Dinge, die Aaron Bushnell schrieb, war: Viele von uns fragen sich, was würde ich tun, wenn ich während der Sklaverei gelebt hätte? Oder der Jim Crow Süden? Oder während der Apartheid? Was würde ich tun, wenn mein Land Völkermord begehen würde? Die Antwort ist, du tust es. Und zwar jetzt. Die Welt wäre ein besserer Ort, wenn Menschen wie Aaron Bushnell weiterleben würden, Tag für Tag kämpfen würden. Weiter in die Zukunft. Der Mut, den Aaron Bushnell besaß, um das zu tun, was er tat, würde uns allen besser dienen, wenn wir ihn Tag für Tag und so lange wie möglich eingesetzt hätten. Wenn man sich der Realität der US-Außenpolitik bewusst wird, ist man wütend, frustriert und verwirrt. Wie könnten wir all diese Vorgänge zulassen? Nicht nur im Gaza, auch in Afghanistan, im Iran, im Irak und an vielen anderen Orten, wo unschuldige Menschen für die Gier einiger weniger Profiteure sterben mussten und müssen. Wo Menschen ihrer Heimat beraubt werden und als unwillkommene Flüchtlinge woanders ein Leben finden müssen. Wir alle müssen daran arbeiten, einen Weg von dort bis heute zu schaffen, auf dem wir alle zusammenarbeiten, um die Welt morgen zu einem besseren Ort zu machen. Es ist gut, wenn sich viele Menschen gegen diese Machenschaften einsetzen und mutig und beherzt vorangehen. Es ist nicht gut, wenn Menschen sterben müssen, um skrupellose Regierungen aufzuschrecken. Wir, die Friedenskämpfer, müssen am Leben bleiben, zusammenhalten. Gemeinsam sind wir eine starke Mehrheit. Innerhalb kürzester Zeit hat die israelische Regierung 35.000 unschuldige Menschen in Gaza getötet. Die US-Regierung agiert, wie so oft, als großer Heuchler. Sie ermahnen Netanyahu, stimmen aber gegen eine Waffenruhe-Resolution und schicken das militärisch gut bestückte Israel weitere Rüstungsgüter. Wie oft will man auf diese perfiden Methoden hereinfallen? Wie lange will man den Nahen Osten weiter destabilisieren, nur um sich an Ressourcen zu bereichern? Wem das Leben nichts wert ist, der hat keine Menschlichkeit. Der handelt dem Teufel gleich und wird alle in den Abgrund ziehen, am Ende auch sich selbst. Lassen wir die Vernichtung unserer humanen Gemeinschaft nicht zu.
I am an active duty member of the United States Air Force, and I will no longer be complicit in genocide. I'm about to engage in an extreme act of protest, but compared to what people have been experiencing in Palestine at the hands of their colonizers, it's not extreme at all. This is what our ruling class has decided will be normal.
Soldaten dieser Welt, hört auf, für die Gier skrupelloser, unmenschlicher Leute zu töten und zu sterben. Widmet euch dem Leben, dem Frieden und der Gerechtigkeit. Es ist nicht gerecht, mit modernster Technik gegen nahezu unbewaffnete, handlungsunfähige Menschen zu kämpfen. Krieg kommt von Kriegen. Was kriegt ihr, außer den Tod, Leid und Albträume? Ihr seid nur die wertlosen, ersetzbaren Handlanger für den Abschaum der menschlichen Zivilisation, die für Profit über Leichen geht, ohne je selber eine Waffe in der Hand zu halten.
Free Palestine, I saw the most dramatic expression imaginable of white guilt. Western guilt. And the complete inability how to figure out how to atone. How to right all the wrongs that so-called civilization has committed and is committing. The flames that consumed Aaron Bushnell are consuming the entire society internally. And unless they change, the whole society is on the path to self-destruction. And yes, symbolically, America will burn itself on the steps of Israel, just as he burned himself at the Israeli embassy. A much more revolutionary act, a much more useful act, obviously, for Aaron Bushnell would have been if he had gone to the Israeli embassy and stood in front of that embassy and declared Shahada. Said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. That would have been the complete disavowal of the sickness and the moral incoherence and confusion of the West, and an embrace of the pure fitrah. I mean, so many people have come to Islam since October 7th, because on the one hand, they witness the savagery and the hypocrisy of their own so-called civilization, and on the other hand, they see the faith and the nobility of the people of Gaza, the courage and the resilience and the patience of the Muslims. And that's a patience and a resilience and a courage that comes from Islam. But it seems that Mr. Bushnell could not ultimately extricate himself from the twisted mentality of the West. I mean, I don't think that it was just Gaza, frankly, that was weighing down on him. No. It's the entirety of Western and American history. It's the realization that you come from a people who have brought innovations to evil, who've been unique in their advancement of corruption and brutality. The West and America have achieved levels of deformity in the human psyche unseen in human history. And as a so-called civilization, they have added new disgraces to mankind that shock us as a species. And again, they've not given their people the tools for how to cope with any of that. They don't know how to cope with what they themselves have done, with what their society has done. I mean, I don't know if Aaron Bushnell was a Christian, but Christianity and Christian thinking permeates their society, permeates their way of thinking. So you have this idea of dying for the sins of others, or sacrificing yourself as an act of absolution, you know, redemptive self-destruction, and so on, combined with the deeply entitled and supremacist savior complex. You know, this idea that a white man's death may be powerful enough as a sacrifice that it will do what 30,000 Arab deaths could not do. This is all from the moral gibberish of Western society. This is what you're doing to your people. Bushnell is a tragic testament to the depths of despair and desperation that can grip a soul when it's faced with the insidious forces of white supremacy and Western imperialism. Soul that wants to be right, that wants to do right, but has no idea how to be that or how to do that. I think that there's tens of millions of Aaron Bushnells in America and in Europe. They're burning internally by guilt and confusion, and by the hypocrisy of their society, and by their own hypocrisy. And very few of them ever can figure out a healthy way to deal with it. More often than not, they use that internal fire as a flamethrower and externalize their own unbearable moral apoplexy as aggression and hostility. It's that cognitive dissonance that I keep talking about. You know, the fact that what you say about yourselves bears no resemblance to your actions. And the fact that you have never really learned how to act differently. How to actually act in accordance with what you say about yourselves. Well, this causes severe mental fissures. It's absolutely fracturing to your mind. You can't help but see that what you're doing makes you contemptible. But you have a need to believe that you're praiseworthy. So how do you reconcile that when you continue to act in a contemptible manner, and when you don't even know how to not act in a contemptible manner? The whole country, you know, the whole society is perpetually suffering a stroke, morally. And again, they always revert to violence, to destruction. That's always the answer. That's always their solution. It's a society whose base code was programmed by Shaitan. So all roads lead to destruction. It's rigged. It's putting people in a pit and then telling them that the only way out is by digging. Meanwhile, there is a ladder that you can climb up to get out of the pit, and that's Islam. But their programming has taught them to think that that ladder is a trap. I said that Bushnell's act smacks of white supremacy and a white savior complex. The idea that somehow his suicide would have more value than 30,000 Arab deaths. Well, look at the reaction. Do you know anything about the attacks that happened in Gaza yesterday, or you only know about this man setting himself on fire? I mean, granted, his self-immolation is newsworthy as a supposed act of protest, but still, the fact is that his death carries more weight in the West than thousands of Palestinian deaths. Even to some extent, it carries more weight among some Muslims and Arabs who are bewildered and, in my opinion, unsettlingly appreciative of him murdering himself. And there's this battle of the spins going on online, with one side saying that he was mental and one side saying that he was a saint. So what white people do, what Westerners do, continues to fascinate everyone, and this is symptomatic of the whole problem. I would say that Bushnell setting himself on fire in front of the Israeli embassy symbolizes the fate of Western so-called civilization. He's all of you. The flames of the evil that your society has inflicted across the globe are consuming you. I said from the beginning of this wave of the genocide that Western civilization is going to be buried in the rubble of Gaza. Zionism is the lighter fluid that you've doused yourselves with. And you yourselves are now flicking the lighter to set yourselves on fire. Just like with Aaron Bushnell, there is another way. Just as he could have live streamed his conversion to Islam at the gates of the Israeli embassy, you should do that too. You should do that instead. I mean, I would love to see that become a movement in the U.S. as a result of what this man did. Let people go to the spot where Bushnell staged his suicidal protest, and instead of destroying themselves, save themselves. And one by one, you might just save your society.